Hey, welcome to X-Oriente.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, we're the New Voice Brotherhood. This is our first live show. So we're kind of experimenting with video and we're experimenting with live. And so, good golly.
Beware the problems.
Yeah,
Ready yourself for gremlins.
it's going to be, a bumpy ride. So let me see. I'm just going to go to the page really quickly and see if we're running live. Are we live? Are we live?
Sure, could be.
I don't see us. Let's see. Hmm. Let's see. Just checking the.
Don't worry.
Probably should have run a test, but what the hell?
Right, but nonetheless, hey, as long as we're live and there's dead, terrible airspace, it's always super cool.
Yeah, it didn't say that we went live.
All right then.
Well, we'll just we'll soldier on.
Okay.
Interesting. Let's see if I can.
Is it up on the website on the X-Oriente.com?
No, but it's I don't know. It should.
Is it supposed to be?
Oh wait, maybe here. Oh yeah, we're sort of live. Although I think it's
Is there a time delay? That's good for my mouth.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
We're gonna get some nasty feedback here in a second.
Okay.
There might be. Okay. All right, I have to turn the sound down. All right, well, hopefully we'll get some comments, and if you guys are out there and you can hear me,
where is it, Eric?
It's I don't know if I can push this to you.
Well, no. Where is it?
You mean the URL? It's on Facebook Live.
Oh, right. Okay. All right. So if I go to Facebook and I go to our page, I'll find it, right?
You should be able to.
Well, there you go.
But in case you can't seem to find it, it's facebook.com/X-Oriente/videos.
Hey, look at that. No, it says we're live now. Hey, there it is. We are live.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, let's get started then. I guess we're in good shape.
There is a delay, and it's really confusing when it starts going, and I'm talking and you're talking. Sorry, sorry, all of you people out there that had to deal with that.
Yeah, we're going to get better at this, I promise. Well, anyway, tonight, originally we had a guest scheduled, Aaron Shoemaker, but last minute family things made it impossible for him to be here, so it's just us. And so how's your week been?
It's been fantastic. Thanks for asking, Eric. Next week is going to be insane crazy. It will be the week of Masonry. Next week, for those of you who don't know, who aren't in the DC area, the Grand Lodge of DC does a celebration called Universal Brotherhood Celebration, where we celebrate the fact that we've got lots and lots of diversity in our lodges. Specifically, we've got a lot of foreign language lodges here in DC. So we do a few events over a weekend from Thursday to Saturday. And that's coming up, not this weekend, not this coming weekend, but the weekend after. And there's a lot of really cool stuff going on. So there's a Federal Lodge number 1, chartered in 1789. They are having a festive board that is possibly one of the best festive boards in the city. That starts Monday night. Tuesday night is Brent Morris and Chris Hodap are going to talk at Benjamin Franklin Samuel Gomper's Lodge number 45. Wednesday night, there's another table lodge. Thursday night, there's something. I mean, it goes on and on. So it's going to be like the week of Masonry. It'll be insane.
I am so jealous. So jealous. I wish I could be there. Hey, do me a favor.
It's going to be fantastic.
Move your mic just a little bit off to the side because it's right in front of your face. So, very nice.
Look at that.
Yeah, there you go.
Articulation is a crazy thing.
So today we wanted to talk about traditional observance. This is something that's been around for a few years now. And a lot of you guys who are listening may be members of a traditional observance lodge. Perhaps you're thinking of joining a traditional observance lodge. And so we just wanted to kind of explore a little bit about, talk a little bit about, a little bit about what is it, where it comes from, our impressions of it, good, good stuff, bad stuff, whatever. But I just wanted to kind of, jump in it, so to speak. So I guess, how should we start this?
Well, here's the thing. Let's start with, what is a TO lodge?
What is a TO lodge? I'm asking, what is a TO lodge?
Yeah, right.
What in your words is a TO lodge?
That's a good question. And I could probably look it up on their website, and it probably says somewhere, though I'm looking at their website and I can't really find it right now. But I'll tell you what I think it is. Traditional observance lodges are lodges that take their Masonry really seriously. And by which I mean they're trying to take it back to the traditional observance of Masonry, meaning that it was a spiritual pursuit, and that it was a place for reflection, and kind of hit all those Enlightenment ideals. That's kind of that's a bad explanation of what they are. But a traditional observance lodge, for example, one of the things that one of their hallmarks is that before lodge begins, there is a moment of meditation, a quiet moment of meditation where they turn the lights out, and there's a moment of silence where everyone kind of centers themselves and gets themselves ready for the meeting. Another thing that so let me see if I can kind of wrap this up a little bit.
Okay. I think that what it is a traditional observance lodge is a lodge that is built around the idea that Masonry should be taken that it's an attempt to raise the quality of experience that its members and guests have in terms of Masonry. So
okay.
What I want to just kind of go through. So the traditional observance was sort of invented. I don't know, what is it, about 10 years ago, maybe?
Maybe. Yeah, you're right.
About a decade they've been around, maybe a little bit more. But they kind of sort of gelled from a bunch of different things that were going on at the time. And I remember because this is about what when X-Oriente started, and there was we were part of this sort of this movement. There were a lot of these essays floating around, but this group sort of came together called the Masonic Restoration Foundation, and they were the ones who sort of developed the idea of traditional observance, and it was based on something that they called European concept lodges. And I think what that is is that what would happen is you'd get these guys who would go to Europe and they would visit, and they would notice that there were like stark differences between how Masonry was practiced in their neck of the woods and how Masonry was practiced in Europe. In Europe, it was very expensive. There was a festive board after every meeting. Guys dressed in, if not tuxedo, at the very least, a dark business suit. To join the lodge, you really had to be known by the membership, and they had to have known you for a long time. And there was, you were sponsored to join this lodge. Also, the distance between degrees, right, was very, very long. Like it could take a year or more to go from entered apprentice to fellowcraft to master mason. That at each step of the game, you were expected to present a paper to the lodge, not just, a catechism or memory work, but there was that too. So they would notice this and they said, "Gosh, this is great. Why don't we have this? What happened?" And so so it was formed. I mean, the Masonic Restoration Foundation was formed, and I did a show like pretty early on in X-Oriente where we talked about fundamentalist Freemasonry, and I sort of said that that, and here's the thing, I think that they would
absolutely.
sort of agree with that.
They would totally be okay with that, actually.
Yeah. So I
mean, they totally wouldn't, because
well. Yeah, given the last decade,
of
what's happened the last decade with the word fundamentalism, we've it's been
right.
kind of a misused word. But what if you think about what fundamentalism is? Sure. It's going back to the roots of what was once traditional, right? And so, just to kind of quote from the Masonic Restoration Foundation, they have a statement of purposes. They say that the Masonic Restoration Foundation is an educational organization that provides news, research, and analysis relating to the rich heritage in Freemasonry and current trends in the North American Masonic experience, right? And so it's a really kind of a good, it's a good way to start in terms of their organization missions and goals, because what they're saying to the world is, we are education, we're not policy. Right, we're a resource, and I think their intent is to sort of influence the practice of Masonry, but not in any way rule it.
Right.
They go on to say, and I'm not reading the whole thing, but the focus of the MRF is to promote the characteristics which form the best lodge meetings, fraternal and social practices across the Masonic landscape, while preserving Freemasonry's landmarks and upholding its identity as a transformative art.
Right.
And then they say the mission of the MRF is to assist and support through education, communication, example, and coordination of efforts among lodges, grand lodges, individuals, and groups of Masons belonging to regularly and duly constituted lodges, the overall improvement of happiness of the individual Mason and his fraternal relationships.
Pretty good.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I can find no fault with that at all. I mean,
so they have another document on there that it's called the 8 Steps to Excellence, the Observant Lodge, and there are 8 things that they list as qualities of a TO lodge, and I'm going to go through them real quick.
Sure.
One is guarding the West Gate. They believe that you should do a lot of research before you bring in somebody into that lodge. Make sure that they're a good fit. Make sure that their needs and wants from a lodge match what the lodge is willing to do. 2, being proficient in Masonic ritual and law. I think that's self-explanatory. Know your P's and Q's if you're going to join the organization. Make sure that you understand what you're doing there. Be proficient in the ritual. That's an experiential thing. And when you're bringing in new Masons, it's important that they see that everybody else there takes it seriously and that they're good at ritual. We've talked about that before. 3, a commitment to advance brethren through the degrees by mutual and genuine effort. Again, is take your time, make sure that you're going through and that you understand what you're doing. 4, the selection and advancement of officers should be by merit alone. That's really self-explanatory and a great thing. 5, dressing your best for lodge. Goes back to what you said, Eric, about how you dress in lodge reflects your purposes there at lodge. At very minimum, dark suit and tie. 6, lodge must offer quality assemblies and be willing to pay for them. This speaks to, your lodge shouldn't just be setting their dues where, they can just kind of hover, but your dues should also go into providing good meals. It should have proper events that are well done, and that costs money. So that you should be supporting your lodge in the efforts to give quality assemblies. 7, the return of a sense of awe to our ceremonies. That's a little bit more complex. I don't want to get too deep into that, but you should look at the document and figure that out. It's fantastic. It's basically just saying that ritual done well, ritual done right, is very, very powerful. And then 8, Masonic education at every meeting. And there you go, quality programming for the meetings. Make it worthwhile for your members to come to lodge. Overall, those 8 qualities, fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And what honestly, every good lodge I've ever been at hits all 8 of those.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, and there were a couple of things so there's 2 documents that I have in front of me. One is their statement of principles. The other is Brother Hammer's. This is Andrew Hammer of Alexandria, Washington Lodge number 22, the 8 Steps to Excellence, the Observant Lodge. And I think that's where those things that you mentioned come from.
Yep.
There are a couple of other things when they in the section of the Masonic Restoration Foundation's principles where they say the intent of our Masonic founders, which is kind of interesting. It's interesting that they, there is a presumption that that they are correctly sensing the intent of the Masons or the Masonic founders, and the reason I say that is because like one of the things they talk about solemnity and table lodges and stuff like that. But even in the 18th century, and I'm looking right now in my browser window, I wish I could, we'll figure out how to share this stuff at some point, but I'll put the picture in the show notes. William Hogarth wrote cartoons, called, about Masons being, drunkards and, running through the streets, with their pants off and stuff like that. So I'm not sure that, it's always been, like the past was always so rosy,
Yeah. So you talk about the intent. Can I just read this? I think this paragraph about the intent, what the Masonic Restoration Foundation sees as the original intent of Freemasonry, I think is very instructive to what they were trying to build. That intent was to build an institution that calls men to their highest level of social being in a state of dignity and decorum, which could serve as a place for serious, mindful discourse on the lessons and meaning of life and search for the better development of oneself. That intent means building a space where such an experience can be created and carrying ourselves in a manner that is consistent with our highest ideals and noblest behaviors. I mean, really, really well written.
Yeah.
And that's a tall order. That's a tall order for the intent of Masonry. But I'll be frank. I totally believe it. I think it's right on.
Yeah. So there's a couple of other things that are in the section of the document called intent that were not part of Brother Hammer's 8 steps to excellence. But they're worth mentioning. So one of them is the idea of small lodges, right? So what they says is it is the intent of Freemasonry that Masons come together to seek fellowship and fraternity and a common pursuit of virtue and moral improvement. This has historically been best been accomplished in small and intimate gatherings of fraternal association. Lodges should be large enough to be efficient, but small enough for all the brethren of the lodge to closely know each other. Fraternal ties must always be stronger than social ties. Masonic relationships are expected to be forged between members the same way a brother grows close to a sibling. And that's kind of an interesting, that's an interesting idea. And the traditional observance lodges that I've been a visitor to, I belong to lodges that are sort of kind of TO, but not, we don't have a TO tattoo on, or we don't have a stamp of TO on it,
right?
But that's of the lodges that I've kind of been a part of. I was one of the founding resurrectors of Union number 6 in Washington, and that was certainly kind of one of the principles, is that we wanted to make sure that it was small enough that we could actually know everybody in the lodge. So I thought that was kind of an interesting thing. And then the very next paragraph is really about tolerance and charity, which I thought was interesting. It reads, it is the intent of Freemasonry that through the exercise of genuinely brotherly love, men become better enabled to regard humankind as one family, charity being the chief of all social virtues encumbers Masons to aid, support, and protect each other, relieve the distress and misfortune of family members, and consciously contribute to the betterment of society at large. Now, you guys who are listening, hang on to this, because we're going to come back to it a little later, because this is a very important idea, and especially important today, given the world we live in. And then let's see, those are the two that I think were not really part of the 8 things. And so I've actually visited several traditional observance lodges. 2 that stick out in my mind as particularly outstanding was Guild Hall in Oklahoma. A great bunch of guys. And the other one was Templum Fidelis Lodge in Bath, Ontario. Those guys were, and I would say that when I visited Guild Hall, that wasn't actually like a lodge meeting so much as a table proceeding. The meeting that I attended in Bath, Ontario, was truly like a TO, complete with like music, meditation, candlelit lodge room, it was the whole thing. And it was I have to say, it was a very impressive ceremony and meeting and stuff like that. And so I think to the extent that the organization, the Masonic Restoration Foundation, is working to increase the level of experience and the quality of experience of the Masonic experience. And here's the thing: this is a really important distinction, not just for the candidate, but for everybody, every time, right?
Right. It speaks to all the whole membership. Absolutely. And I think it's an amazing program. And it's got a lot of wisdom behind it. Because like you said, you go and you visit a lodge like that, and when you walk away and go, wow, that was great. Those are the times that you remember. So yeah, 100%.
So here's my first bit of a grenade question. Should every lodge be a traditional observance lodge?
No.
Why?
Here's the thing: is that TO lodges? I think it's an easy question, because I think that traditional observance lodges are special, and they cease to be special if all of them are. Do you see what I'm saying? So I think that I think traditional observance is difficult. And I mean difficult in that it takes effort. It takes a good deal of effort on the officers and the members to keep that standard going. And so I don't think that necessarily it's right for everybody. And I think that that having a few traditional observance lodges, I think actually makes the entire experience better. But I think that would it be nice to have all lodges be traditional observance? I don't know.
Yes.
Well, no, I mean,
well, all right. So here's the thing: you've fallen into my little trap.
Right. Well, so all right, wait, just before we get there, so I want to say oh yeah, we should all be like that, but I think the thing that stops me from saying it is that that's my experience, right? That's what I want from a lodge. But, the cool thing about Masonry is that Masonry is universal. There's a little something for everybody there. And I think if you TOize everything, by the way, that's a new word I just made, TOize. Yeah. If you TOize everything, I think that, you're going to alienate a lot of really good people that would have come into it. And I think there are people that are going to come into Masonry. There are men that will join this fraternity, and be like, I'm not going to do that. That's a little too serious and creepy for me right now, but I'll do this other thing. And then they get into it. They really enjoy it. And then they go, yeah, I should have done that. Really, that's what I want. And then they affiliate, and that's not wrong.
You sure about that?
Go ahead. No, yeah. Go ahead.
All right. So here's my position on this. I disagree only in the sense that if the Masonic Restoration Foundation is being true to their principles, right?
Right.
What they're trying to do is they're trying to elevate the quality of lodge experience for everybody, and they build a set of best practices for Masonry.
Well,
wait, hang on. Let me kind of take you through the argument. Here's the thing. I understand where you're coming from, and I don't. I mean, right. I disagree with you, but I disagree with you, but I'm not saying you're wrong, right?
Okay. All right.
And there's a reason for that. Because and I think this is where like TO starts to get into a little bit of trouble, right? To the extent that they are an educational organization, right, and that they are, they are kind of a resource in that, then I think that, like, in other words, I'm not sure that there's a distinction between a traditional observance lodge and, like, to me, there shouldn't be a distinction. Like, all lodges should have all of those elements, right? To some extent. Like, now, whether your lodge wants to dress in tuxedo or not observe a strict dress code because, maybe you've got guys who, I'll give you an example. I will often show up to lodge wearing a sport coat, but sometimes I wear jeans. And the reason I do that is because I work in advertising. I don't wear a suit. And if I wear a suit, it either means that people are like freaked out or they're looking around for clients. Right. And that is business standard in my industry. So when I then go to lodge, now I can put a tuxedo or something like that in my, car and bring it to lodge and change and stuff like that. But more often than not, that means I'm not going to show. Right. And so that becomes a problem. So can I wear a tie? Absolutely. Can I wear a button-down shirt? I wear one every day. Can I wear, but can I dress in tuxedo every time? No. And for TO lodges that do observe that, a lot of them meet quarterly, which is way more doable than if I have to meet twice a month doing it, right? So I think that as a set of best practices, TO is fantastic. Like I can find very little, if anything, wrong with any of those practices. But the problem for me gets into when you have this sort of idea of, like when you put traditional observance or TO, and then you have that little circle R next to it or TM next to it, right? Where now all of a sudden, and this was actually a problem for them, because I remember I had a conversation with one of their founders about 10 years ago. It's not long after they started, and they were talking about wanting to certify lodges. And I said to them, I'm like, if you do that, you are going to run afoul of Grand Lodges, because now you're telling people how to practice Masonry, and that is the sole, that is the sole, purview, the privilege of the Grand Lodge, right? And so this is where I think that traditional observance kind of gets into a little bit of hot water, with Grand Lodges and others, is when you take that set of practices as a whole, and it becomes this all or nothing thing. And I would say, in fairness to the MRF, I don't think that they think like that. I don't think that they, I don't think that they would, like remove a lodge from their roster because, they didn't charge a lot of money for dues or something like that. I think that they, I think what it's about how people interpret what those practices are. But like, if you go back to their intent document, right, their statement of principles, there's this one paragraph there. And it says MRF activities may only happen with the permission of a Grand Lodge. And I read that and I went, that's kind of weird. What's an MRF activity? You know what I mean? Like, wait, we're talking about Masonry. There's no such thing as an MRF activity. I mean, maybe there is. Maybe there's like an MRF symposium or something like that. All right, that's an MRF activity.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the whole concept is really fine and dandy. I think it's great, but it's my concept of Masonry, right? It jives with what I want from Masonry. That isn't what everybody wants. It's just the plain and simple truth. And those people are no less of Masons than I am. They just aren't. Just because you don't want to read Albert Pike doesn't mean, you can't hang out with me and you can't be in my club. I mean, that's stupid. not everybody wants that deep educational experience for every meeting, and that's okay. I'm fine with that, and I accept their Masonry right along with the stuff that I want to do. And that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
Is that like, yeah, I mean, would it be nice? Sure. If everybody had the correct dues and we could all have nice dinners and we would all look nice when we hung out together. And there's a lot of nice stuff in there, but then you get into the stuff that's much more difficult. The education at every meeting, that's tough. The way that a TO lodge presents itself in its lodge, so it prefers to have lit candles rather than light bulbs in the tapers for the lesser lights. Can't do that everywhere. Number one, there are a lot of lodge halls that are old enough that lighting a fire anywhere, no matter how controlled, it's just a terrible plan. And there's a couple of those in DC that you just were not allowed to light any kind of candles in, because we'll burn the joint down. So, I mean, I think it's nice. Is it for everyone? No. And that's okay. And I think that's on a meta level. That's what Masonry is, right? Mm-hmm. It's not for everyone. That's okay. It's good. That's good. It shouldn't be for everybody.
So if we were to sort of deconstruct this a little bit and say,
I would say, if we deconstruct this a little bit, I would say, and this is going to be controversial and it'll be fun to be that, I think it's Masonry inside of Masonry. This is really what it is. It's the Mason's Masonry.
That kind of makes me uncomfortable a little bit, though.
Doesn't it? Yeah.
Like, it kind of creates haves and have-nots. It kind of creates classes of Masonry.
Does. Yeah.
I'm not sure I like that.
I don't either. But think about what it says, right? And it kind of fits. I mean, it makes you feel uncomfortable, but it's true. Right? It's kind of true.
So what if we just said, like, so one of the principles is there's Masonic education at every meeting.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
What if we said that doesn't necessarily mean that you're presenting a paper at every meeting, right?
All right. Okay. Fine.
That might mean that you open the floor, you as part of your meeting, or you take 10 minutes after you close lodge before you go out to the bar, to have a short discussion about some aspect of ritual or some aspect of what you're doing. Maybe that's enough, right? Like, in other words, I think the principles themselves are fine. I think that the way in which some of these guys interpret it, like, for example,
it's tough.
Yeah. I mean, excuse me, you go to Guildhall, right? And that operation is a class operation, right? Like they meet
Sure.
in a private club. It is I don't know, like, if it's super expensive or not, but I'm willing to bet it, it's not pizza and beer. Right. And so,
right.
And they make the commitment. They wear, black tie. They wear, they wear, and they went out and had, their own firing glasses made, which I have one. I keep it in my office and I fire people all the time with it. And it's a beautiful experience. Like, I had a great time.
Sure.
Like, Bob Davis, who I think is actually watching our live cast,
Hi, Bob.
had me there. Shout out to Bob Davis. We love you. It was a great experience, but I would agree that not every lodge can have that kind of experience at that level of experience, nor should it. But
nor here's the other thing. Nor does every lodge have somebody like Bob Davis, who's an extraordinarily well-read, educated Freemason. The guy really knows what he's talking about. Also a snappy dresser. But the thing is that, like, to put upon every lodge having a Bob Davis. You just can't do that.
That's what I'm saying. Is like I think that's where these different levels of
right
experience are. So here's what I'd say. Like, should every, and this is why I have the problem with the label Traditional Observance. At one point, my lodge, Oriental, was asked if we wanted to sort of join the roster. And at the time we had a discussion about it and we declined. And the reason that we declined is that we didn't want to feel like we were being obligated to take on any of the practices that they were doing, even though we were doing most of them and we still do most of them.
Right.
We didn't want to feel like we had to like live up to some other standard of TO. And I think that's kind of my issue with Traditional Observance is that the content of what's in there is fantastic. The wrapper that it's wrapped in is fraught with problems to me. And that's what I'm having a hard time kind of reconciling.
Is it because that TO feels like branding to you?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yes.
Right. So it feels like branding, and it feels like aspirational branding.
Well,
on top of that, right?
No, it's not. It's not that. It's that a
lifestyle brand,
but
like Louis Vuitton.
Yes. Well,
right.
So you hit the nail on the head. Lifestyle, right? So to me, it's that when you have a brand, you have certain expectations of that brand, right? So, like for example, and here's what happens is like when you've got a brand like let me think of this for a second, Dom Perignon, right? Great champagne. Everybody loves Dom Perignon. It's a premium champagne. Right? Is it the world's best champagne? You could argue that, but it's probably the most well-known premium champagne.
Sure.
Right? And there's an expectation of what you're going to get when you pop open a bottle of that and you pour a glass, right? And if it tastes like Coca-Cola, you're going to spit it out and you're going to be like, right? You're going to be like really upset because you paid money and you had this expectation of what you were going to get when you went into this bottle of champagne and you were disappointed, right? And so I think what happens with TO is that when a lodge says we're a Traditional Observance lodge, it creates a set of expectations.
Correct.
And if those expectations aren't met, then you get into this problem. And the problem is either like, well, you're not a real TO lodge, right? And then you get into that discussion, which who wants to get into that discussion?
Yeah.
Or it's they're not living up to a TO lodge and they're somehow inferior, right? And that's a problem too.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, I'll buy that. It really is. It's the branding thing that makes me feel a little uncomfortable because, as soon as you start labeling it and like, oh, we're a TO lodge, there's an old saying, they used to call them silk stocking lodges, right?
Yes.
It's the lodge with all the doctors and the lawyers or all the, deep thinkers. That's the silk stocking lodge. Right there, you're stratifying things. And
sorry, I just blew paper.
Nice.
Sorry, guys.
I think that stratifying it is actually counterintuitive to what we teach as Masons, right? It's that the doctor and the lawyer sit with the plumber and the electrician. And that's the whole goal, is to meet and to discourse with people that you would never meet and discourse with in your regular life. So TO almost feels like it's trying to set itself aside, from that. And I think that's the kind of the uncomfortable part of it. Now, that being said, I don't think that they're doing that in any way, shape, or form. And in fact, every TO lodge I've ever been to has been incredibly welcoming. And on top of that, they're just really proud of how they practice Masonry. So they want people to come in. They want guests. They want, more people at lodge with them to share in the experience because they're proud of it, and justifiably so. It takes a considerable amount of effort to do that stuff right. And so what's funny about it is that while it sounds that way, while it feels like, lifestyle branding where, there's Masonry and there's TO Freemasonry, it's not. a small group of people who strive to do a little bit better in their lodges. And that's really what it boils down to. It's way oversimplifying things, but that's what it is. It's just people that are just trying to give a better experience in their lodges.
I would certainly like to believe that. I mean, I'm not saying that I don't believe that. What I'm saying is my experience has been very limited. Like I've only been to a couple of them. And the experiences that I had were very positive, but I could see that this could become a pitfall if you, for example, so I kind of see TO as a bunch of like layers, right? At its core, at the core of TO is this idea of paying attention to the initiatic experience. And I want to come back to that in a second.
Yeah.
Taking education seriously and solemnity of ritual, right? Like, and ritual excellence, right? That to me is the core of what TO strives to do. Like, and so in my view, like if you do nothing else but those things, you're going to have a better lodge experience for it. Yeah. Right.
I agree with that.
Then there's the next layer out, and that layer is sort of paying attention to the physical experience. So things like, candlelit rooms. And here's the thing, we have LED candles now. You don't have to light fires. It creates the same ambiance, right? It's not quite as nice, but you're not burning down your lodge hall either.
That's true. And you can do it by remote control.
So sort of paying attention to those. And I've mentioned this many times, but man, if you ever get to New York, go to Mariners number 67 for their third degree. It's amazing. It's amazing. They pay amazing attention to detail in terms of the experience of their degrees. But just sort of the sensory aspects of that and the what psychologists call the hedonic aspects of it, right? So things like good food, right? Good drink, toasting, things like that, table, festive boards and stuff like that. And then the outer layer of that is sort of the kind of the icing on the cake, the high dues, the accoutrement, the, stuff like that. And so as you have these practices that sort of radiate out, right? I think that it becomes dangerous maybe, or perilous if you don't pay attention to those things in the right order. What you wind up with is an Epicurean lodge, right? Where you've got a lodge that, and I know of lodges that believe themselves to be traditional observance lodges, but what they really are Epicurean lodges, where they have, very, very high dues. They only let rich guys in because everything that they do is very expensive. They always meet in tuxedo. They, and it's when you look at the experience, it's really not anything more than a regular Illinois lodge. I give it away. No, I'm just kidding.
Sure.
Like a regular lodge
located in Tennessee.
A regular lodge, it's no more than a regular lodge in playing dress up at that point.
Right. And it basically just becomes an extension of the country club.
Yeah, exactly. And this is where it gets really kind of a problem, because now you're not judging people on, in other words, you're not bringing people into the lodge based on their character or their intellect or their ability. You're bringing them based on their income level and their
their social standing.
Their social standing, right? And there is some aspects, and important aspects of social mobility and Freemasonry. That's always been there since we were founded. But
absolutely right.
It is, So it can be kind of, it can be an issue. It can be an issue. And so I think, if I had one call to the MRF, to say, maybe think about this in terms of your, phase 2 or phase 3, is sort of a rehabilitation program. People, if guys want to up their lodge experience, understanding like how to do that in a way that is right for them. Because right now what they're doing is they're publishing sort of a series of best practices. Best practices that really come out of, some key documents. So one of them is was by Brother Thomas Jackson, who wrote "What Are We Trying to Save?" It was a really great article. I honestly can't remember. It appeared in a Masonic magazine originally, but he says some things that I thought was very interesting, and I don't. We've talked in the past about social relevance, and so there, just a couple things I want to bring to your attention and sort of get your input on. So one of the things that What Are We Trying to Save really talks about is like it's sort of a critique of our obsession with numbers.
Right.
And so one thing I thought to myself was the number of Masons that we have should be a secret. I'm not sure I agree with that. It was kind of an interesting idea. Like,
no, but I like it. I think
like,
it's fun. I totally get where you're coming from.
Like for us to say, there's 5 million Masons in the United States. Like, whose business is that?
Sure. Also, I think it would be really fun to have that surprise. Like one day you show up to lodge and no one else is there. Never counted anybody else. I had no idea it was just me. No,
I think you need 3.
Right. And that would be the surprise. Damn it. Can't open lodge. So no, I love the idea, right? And the idea is that, shut up, stop thinking about that stuff. The important stuff is focus on your members, not on your numbers.
Yeah.
But okay, so all right, okay. Then what do dues matter? Dues are a number. Right?
Yeah.
So why are you so focused on that? Why are you, the purpose of it, I guess, is that you need money for your lodge to exist. It has to have an income. It has to have lifeblood. But at the same time,
yeah.
I'm thinking it through to myself. You might want to be able to say, like, listen, we'll have a sliding scale. We'll make you pay. We will have you pay something that is. There will be a contribution to the lodge that is a significant contribution that comes from you. So it'll be an investment for you. But if you're, if you're a right out of college, that investment's going to be pretty small for you. You're still going to have to make the investment. So maybe, right out of college, your dues are $200 a year. That's a lot of money for a first year out of college person, who eats ramen noodles. But they can afford it. They're going to have to do some planning to afford it, but they can afford it. At the same time, Eric Diamond, advertising executive, can afford a hell of a lot more than $200 a year to his lodge, and subsidizes that $200 a year for that first year out of college student, and who then and that gets into it almost is like a charity, right? Because what you're doing is that you're elevating an experience to something that he could never hope to do on his own. He'd never hope to go to that restaurant and have that steak that he had for his festive board before lodge. But you subsidize that for him, and that's a tangible benefit for him. But everybody's got some skin in the game, and they're all invested, right? Mm-hmm. It's the investment that counts. So maybe that's it, right? But the number doesn't matter. What matters is the investment.
So the way my synagogue works, sort of from a financial perspective, might shed some light on what you're talking mm-hmm. about. So the way that it works is that when you join my synagogue, and membership has certain privileges, like for example, during the high holidays when everybody goes to synagogue, they issue tickets and only members get in. But anybody's free at any time. If you want to come for services, there's no membership ticket or pass to get into the building or something like that.
Sure. Right.
But the dues are around, for a family, it's around, I don't even know, but it's around $2,500 a year or something like that to affiliate. And so every family is expected to pay that. Now, some families can't pay that because they don't have the financial wherewithal. What then happens is the synagogue remands part of those yearly dues, right? So they'll say, all right, well, you pay what you can and stuff like that. And Masonry's always had that, right? So if a brother is unable to pay his dues, the lodge is always free to remand those dues either fully or partially. But when you join, if you're a family, so if you're unmarried, right, you're expected, you pay kind of a lower rate. You pay kind of a base membership rate. But once you're a married couple, you're then expected to contribute to a building fund for 5 years, and that's like an extra $1,000 a year for 5 years. And then once that 5 years is up, then you're free and clear, and you just pay your yearly dues. But then every year they do an appeal, right, on Yom Kippur, and they pass out an envelope, and everybody is expected to pledge something, and it's all anonymous as to what you pledge. But typically what happens is you get people who are very wealthy in the synagogue, and they pledge a lot of money, and there are people who are not so wealthy, and they pledge a little money, right?
I was just in my head thinking about the little envelope that they pass out, and that it probably says something on it like, you don't have to give us money. I mean, we'll just sit here in the dark. That's fine.
They do. That's pretty much how it works, right? The president of the synagogue gets up and says, "You like this roof? You want to keep this roof?"
Right.
Yeah.
I just remember that it's the old joke. How many Jewish mothers does it take to screw in a light bulb?
Yeah. I'll sit in the dark. I'll sit in the dark. Yeah. So, but that's one dues structure that might work.
Right.
But
that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So then going back to Brother Jackson's paper, there was something that really, really struck me as interesting. He said, we must keep it, being Freemasonry, a viable force that can display to the world what is good and right in mankind, an enclave of toleration in an intolerant world, a unique organization in a world that needs that uniqueness, an organization known worldwide by the quality of its membership. And this is kind of interesting to me because what he's saying here is, number one, the world needs Freemasonry, which I completely and totally agree with. But number two, there is an element of moral instruction, right, about tolerance that needs to be part of sort of the Masonic curriculum. And he goes on to say, because society lowers its standards does not mean we must do the same to attract them. Indeed, we have an obligation to the future to lead the way to what is morally and ethically right, to be more than just average in society. And I think that that's a big part of, what Masonry purports to teach. And I think what we've, as a fraternity, we've kind of lost that. Like it's embedded into our rituals, but we haven't teased it out in a modern sense yet. So that's another area that, MRF 2.0 or whatever that, they can kind of start to bring some of that back. And then there was a document called Laudable Pursuit. Remember that one? Did you ever read that one?
Who wrote it?
The Knights of the North, which is basically the North being Indiana. This is basically like Chris Hodap and Nathan Brindle and like a bunch of guys who went on to create Vitruvian Lodge and the Masonic Society. Put this, so they wrote a paper called Laudable Pursuit, a 21st Century to Dwight Smith, and I think we did a show on it once, but it's a much longer document than Jackson's, and it really does. It sort of sets the stage for what then became the Masonic Restoration Foundation. And by the way, all these papers that we've been talking about today, you can find them on the Masonic Restoration Foundation website. And Vitruvian Lodge is a lodge in Indianapolis that is a TO lodge. I believe it might have been even one of the first first traditional lodges, traditional observance lodges around. So I think, I don't know, we're coming up on 55 minutes. How should we wrap this discussion up? What do you think? I'm kind of oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I'm kind of the mind. I mean, I think that the pursuit of these standards, the pursuit of these ideals, I think is really good. And I think that to the extent that groups like the MRF and the sort of the exemplar traditional observance lodges can be an example of how this can work, I think is really good. But there are things that concern me, and they concern me not so much because I think that I think that their motives are, I'm imputing their motives. I'm not. I just think that the MRF as an organization and traditional observance as a practice, they walk a very fine line, because I can see where it would be very easy to run afoul of a Grand Lodge if a traditional observance creates practices that ran counter to Grand Lodge policy. And I'll give an example. In Illinois, you're not allowed to have a chamber of reflection. Just can't do it, right? I mean, you can pretend, you could like put somebody in a quiet room for a little while, right? As long as you don't call it a chamber of reflection. The second you put the words chamber of reflection anywhere in the room, right, or a skull or a bit of salt or anything like, any of those things. You can have a room
of thought. I would like to have a room of thought.
You can have a room, and if you put the guy in the room and you say, I want you to think about what's going on, right, and pay attention, you're probably okay. Anything more than that, and the Grand Lodge finds out about it, you're gonna be in a world of hurt, right? And they're pretty serious about this. I'm not entirely sure why. I think there's nothing. In fact, I saw the Chamber of Reflection at Mariners, and I was completely impressed by it. I think it's a great idea, but that's the decision that our Grand Lodge has made, and so as Masons, we gotta abide by it. And so I think if you talk to any of the MRF guys, the guys on the board, or any of the people who sort of are the movers and shakers of traditional observance, they would say, "Oh, absolutely, you follow your Grand Lodge first. That's that's a no-brainer." Right. But I think that the messages are mixed, because if you're trying to, again, this is the TOTM problem, right? Is that if you're going to go TO,
live up to it.
And so you're trying to innovate the experience of Masonry, but you're trying to do it in a way that doesn't run afoul of your Grand Lodge. So I think it's important that if you guys are considering, doing a, that you are considering sort of elevating some of the practices in your lodge, that you make sure you run it by your DDGM or your, someone.
Yeah. Well, and not only that, but I think the other thing to wrap this up would be is that TO is a really good start. It's a really good place, a resource for you to go and look at and to see, if you're thinking like, hey, I'm a new officer in my lodge, and we're really talking about doing some new things in the next coming years. It's a great resource to start off with, But I always encourage people to be creative. Use that as a starting point, and do what works for you.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's all I got.
Cool. Let me just see if there was anything else that was. Yeah, and here's something that's interesting. This is from Andrew Hammer's paper. He says in his section 2 that we seek to uphold the highest standards of our respective Grand Lodges, and he points out that an observant lodge is not a renegade lodge; it seeks to be an exemplary one.
Yeah, right. Makes a lot of sense.
But again, the other thing that I wanted to And this is, this may just be a language thing, that they could sort of, that Brother Hammer could kind of correct if he wanted to. But he says, we should... Wait, what did it say here? Here. The festive word conveys a sense of conviviality that helps build true brotherhood and is historically established in the craft as not merely a simple dinner, but quite honestly, the second half of a lodge meeting. An observant lodge cannot forego it. And I think that is a pretty provocative statement that, you'd want to watch out for, right? So if they're claiming that is a second half of a lodge meeting, all of a sudden that opens you up to scrutiny, right? So mm-hmm. I would say that what happens after the gavel sounds at the final thing is that we're no longer in Masonic ritual. We're no longer in a Masonic meeting. We might be doing activities with brothers, but it's not it's not a Masonic meeting, right? Mm-hmm. And that that the I would sort of encourage the MRF to be very careful about a logical fallacy called the no true Scotsman fallacy. Are you familiar with that one?
No.
So the no true Scotsman fallacy basically says no true Scotsman would ever, and then insert whatever, right? As a way of convincing people. If you want to be a true Mason, if you want to be a real Mason, if you want to be a traditional Mason, you're going to do these things, because if you don't, you're not. Is the implication. And that's not necessarily, I don't think that's what the intent is of put it this way, I don't think that was the intent of the founders of Masonry, and I don't think it was the intent of the founders of the MRF. So I think it's one of those things that, like, as we seek to improve the Masonic experience and we seek to start to make some changes in how we do things, not necessarily what we do, because that's prescribed for us, but how we do things. I think we should remember that there's really, in this way of thinking, right, we're here to make the experience better. And to the extent that it's not better, we shouldn't be doing it. And that, like you said before, Jason, that's different for every lodge. So can every lodge be a TO lodge? I would agree with you. I would say no, but I don't think every lodge should be a TO lodge. And in fact, in a way, in that sort of wrapper, like that sort of idea of a TO lodge. Here's my quotes. TO lodge, right? Wow. I don't think any lodge should be. Yeah, I don't think any lodge should be a TO lodge. I think all lodges should be excellent lodges.
That's exactly right. Yeah. There you go.
Cool.
That's a good wrap up.
It's a good wrap up. All right. So a couple things. I hope you guys liked the live format. It'll get better over time. We're making improvements.
I didn't swear at all. I'm really impressed with myself.
And you'll be able to find this video on Facebook. If you're not attending live, you'll be able to find it on Facebook. It's also going to be posted to YouTube, and it'll be on the www.X-Oriente.com. It'll be on the blog. Any show notes will probably only appear on the blog because we have limited space on both those other formats to put any show notes in. I will put links in the show notes to the MRF website and to some of the documents that we've referenced tonight. And if you like what you hear, consider becoming a supporter of X-Oriente. For like $5 a month, our executive producers, you become an executive producer, you get a cool pin, you get a kit of thank you stuff, and but more importantly, you're helping to support really great programming. And this whole video thing and the whole ability to do Facebook Live and the additional bandwidth that it requires would not be possible without the support of our executive producers. And also, now that we've got video, it means we have credits. And so all of our executive producers get a credit at the end of the show, and we thank them for their support. If you want to let us know what you think. We'd love to hear about it. Please drop us a line at xoriente@gmail.com, or you can leave a comment on our Facebook page, or you can message us on Facebook. We're both there frequently. And hopefully next week we'll be back and we'll have guests. We're going to be able to have guests quite easily now and do panels and things like that. So this is a very exciting time for the show. And I want to thank you, our audience. Jason, I want to thank you. You're the best co-host anyone could ever have.
Aw, shucks.
And,
you too, Eric.
And keep, we're gonna be doing these live pretty much as often as we can every week. So just check in on the X-Oriente Facebook page, and you'll see a calendar event that'll let you know that we're actually going to be doing a show. And we'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you for everything.
And we're